So we're in Last Epoch, and we are going to be going over the strategy step by step on how to create a loot filter. So instead of making this a guessing game and making it hard for you guys, we're just going to build one together. So the very first thing I want to do is get used to, there's a hotkey. So when you like look through your bags and you're like, I really don't want to see this anymore, or why am I still seeing this crap? For my key setup, it's Shift F. Just make sure that's what it is for you, but it'll come right to the loot filter. If you open up settings and you look down, there's like a manage loot filter button. It'll show you the hotkey right there. I can actually do that really quick. Just make sure you guys can see it. So right here, and then the hotkey right there. So that's a good hotkey to remember, so you can jump right into it. Okay, so this is mine. I've already built out for my current Shadow Dagger Blade or Rogue, and it has been an absolute blast. But let's start this from the beginning so you guys get to see it step by step. There won't be anything that you won't see me do. So we're going to hit create new filter. Go ahead and name it whatever you want. I'm going to create this sweet name called new loot filter number 1 as it's been recommended. Let's even pick a cool color. I'm going to make that green. And I think that dagger down there, that'll be good. So I've set a color to it. Now it's easy when I look at them, I can find them again. But we're going to start with the very first thing you want to do. And that is by adding a simple rule that blocks everything. I know, before you get freaked out, that's what we got to do is first. It's just the easiest way to make this filter is generally to hide everything and then tell it what you want it to see. Because there's so much stuff and that's just an easier process overall. So we're going to do that by first starting with rarity. We're going to mostly focus on equipment early because that's the only stuff that matters. But there are some things like idols that will come up later that you'll want to do, or certain unique gear and exalted gear that we're just going to leave open for now. Because you don't drop very much of it early in the game. But what will come in is we're going to block normal, magic, and rare. I have done modes, but I didn't really need it that long where I didn't block rare. I just left rare coming through as I was starting my build. But I would actually recommend that you block that. So now at this point, if we did this, unless they were exalted, uniques, or set items, which we won't see many of in the early game, it would block all of those. We want to now tell it what we want to see. And the first thing I want to start with is just make it really easy and do it in this order. I know you can probably group these, but just for right now, it'll matter in a little bit. We're going to come and pick the item type, and we're just going to select what item types we want. So weapons that I want a dagger. So I'm just going to confirm that, and I'm going to add. So now it'll say show here. Oh, I did do one thing I want to make sure. Hide. We have to hide. Update. So that is what tells it. Hide all normal, magic, and rare items. So the language is pretty clean. Usually as you start building these, it does make sense after you mess with it a little bit. So then show one-handed daggers. I'm going to add another rule. I also think I am willing to do swords on this. I actually have a sword equipped in this build anyway, so that is probably a good sign. I'm going to add sword, confirm, and add. So now we're going to go and do that for all of the armor pieces as well. We're going to do that for all the item pieces, but just really quick, again, just come down here and pick one at a time. So just do these 5. And if you have offhands for your build, you're going to use Catalyst, Shield, or Quiver. This is where you get those. So if you know you're going bow, you got to have that. If you want to do one hand and a shield, do that. If you're not sure, but still do these one at a time. So I'm going to do this one helm, and then I can keep going. So I'm going to take a second and just add it so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me do that, but that's basically what I'm doing is adding each of these rules. So about halfway through with these, I did realize that I was doing something that I want to make sure you guys see that just a little bit speeds up things, but as things get more complex, it speeds up things quite a bit. It's just this little ability to duplicate the rule. Now, when we do that, the thing to understand is that everything on top overrides anything underneath. And that's how we're blocking these, but then showing them up. This is kind of how their rule stack works. But with this duplicate, I don't have to worry. These are all the same level thing. They're only going to show me that one type of thing, so they're not in conflict. I am going to duplicate it, turn off the one that it was already doing, and then switch it over to the one I do want, so I can update those easy. Cool. So now that I actually finished that, and it does happen pretty quick. I think it was like a few minutes to actually do that. I do want to sort them a little bit, and this tab at the front lets me kind of organize it where I want. I'm generally most concerned in early game with my weapon. That's where it decides if I'm doing damage. So now what we want to do is, in case you guys don't know, but crafting is a big part of this. And the materials to craft will drop on their own. They're shards, ability shards, like they'll say, like add critical strike, chance, or whatever. And the shard will then allow you to, if you hit the shard, it'll allow you to place it onto a item that has an open slot or upgrade one that already has that same ability. Another way to do that is to break down the gear that has those shards. So we want to add a filter. We now might not want to say have a wand, but we may want the affix that's on the wand so we can break it down to get the materials we need for later. Some people are even recommending that you just kind of grab everything, the bags, as long as you're willing to pay more gold. It's kind of an endless bag, so you can open up a decent amount of bags that you can just kind of collect everything, at least in early campaign, before you feel like there's a lot of pressure to get rid of everything. But they do it so that they can break down the shards at endgame when you have way more money, and they're generally relatively cheap to do that, and that also gives you a chance to like decide what it is. I just realized that for the most part, it's expensive to break things down. I do want to make sure that they matter, and it's always like, as you progress through one of these games, you get better at the game and you get clearer on what you need. So some of the stuff that you thought was important is not going to be. So I kind of took it down a notch, and what I came in here, and I'm just going to have it show certain affixes. So now it has the affixes. Now this is where it got a little daunting. I remember when I first went in here, but they have done a good job of kind of breaking it down into elements. And there's a lot of I click on it, do I really want that? Do I want that? This is where I kind of add things at first to go, okay, I kind of like that. So I read through this and it's like, well, I'm doing a rogue, so dexterity is probably important. Increased area for melee skill. That sounds interesting. Sure, let's try that. One thing that would be really nice, and they don't really tell you, is how rare these are or how unlikely they are to drop. And that's what you'll start to notice. After you've collected a bunch of dexterity and you're like, hey, I have a ton more of that, you might want to come and uncheck it here. And that's how, this is actually the first way that I filter down so that I'm not constantly going back to town. So then I come through, I check melee. Do I want any of these? Am I going lightning? Am I going just physical? This is mostly a physical damage. You may look at void damage later. Yeah, let's take it. If you're just starting out, grabbing the just in case shards is not a bad idea. But I still like being a little bit more selective so you're not just grabbing everything. If you're going caster, obviously you want to grab most of what's in there. If you want to grab a whole category, you can just check that box there. And now anything that has any of these, any item that has any of those will show up. So this isn't hiding the shards themselves. So the shards drop on the ground by themselves. They won't be blocked by this. This is just for gear itself. So let me keep coming down. I don't know what you're doing for your build, but this is how we kind of do it. Now, this is the general for attack and some regulars. So offensive, defensive, healing, resistances, armor. Resistance is really important in this game, so early on you do want to collect a decent amount of having all of these in case you're low on lightning and you have one, like a piece you just picked up that's great, that you just want to throw lightning on, resistance on, you can. So getting those shards early. Critical strike, avoidance, that becomes important very end game, but these are rare shards. I put them on anyway, you're not going to see them that often, at least early on in the game. So movement speed, I would definitely take. I want to see that on my boots anyway, or grab it so I can upgrade the movement speed on my boots. Pull down is generally a good one. Okay, so you get the idea. You can kind of come through here. They're broken down into nice little categories, so don't be really it's not too crazy, just kind of get it. This is going to be health, so I might want all of those. So it's just to open it and read it. It tells you what they're doing. They're added life, increased life. This is added versus increased. This is a percentage. This is a plus. So this adds 30 life, or this would add 6%, stuff like that. So just kind of come through here and think about your build and think about what you might want or what build types you might try to do. And then you can kind of select these. You'll notice right away if you try to select all of them, which is, everything will come through. So all of our blocks don't matter. So basically come in here and be selected. The last two areas, this is going to be your class specific. This is the stuff that can make a big difference in endgame. A lot of the if you're really pushing into a build, you can come in here. I'm doing the rogue. You can come in here and you can see specialties that actually put it on different abilities you have. So even down here, these were very common. But getting levels too at end game, levels to the different abilities. So these are the different abilities you could have. And then there's some also special effects that are just shards for this build. I click a decent amount of these when I'm building my build for real. And the reason is because these are some of the rarer things. So unless I know, later, I knew I wasn't going to be doing, I was going to switch out of the bow in endgame. I did play bow early, but I was going to switch out, and I knew I was going to go dagger mostly. So I might look at opening those up, but sword was still a possibility. So just adding a bunch of these, does it make sense? I knew I was going to go dual wielding, so I might add that. And then go ahead and confirm. And so that'll tell you how many you selected will be right here. And then go ahead and add that to your list. So now we have block everything, then show me all the items that I'm going to want, all the weapon or all the armor and stuff, weapons, and then the special affixes that I want. So this is where kind of the feeling of everything going, but this should get you through early game. This will take you like probably to 20, level like 15 to 20. You can start getting, and that'll give you tons of stuff you can just drop in to break down later for the shards. This should give you plenty of room to move. But now let's say that you're starting to go up in level and you just notice that a ton of crap is still dropping and you are spending way too much time every like half of a map. You're running back to town to drop things off. It does get crazy like that. There is just a ton of gear and you want to refine this further. I want to show you the way. So the first thing as I had mentioned, this is the first place to play, is adding or deleting these. So if you're getting too much of one kind and you're seeing that, like, oh, I'm just tired of making the selection. I think I got enough resistances and I'll have plenty to break down for shards. I don't want to see resistances. You can come in and turn off that lightning resistance. So that's the first place where I'll start like trying to control it myself just for the feeling that I'm having with it. Then the next place is, this is why we set it up one at a time. The next place that's going to make the most sense is going to come in here and because we set them up as one item, one type, we actually have the subtypes. And the subtypes are the special items or the special effects that are only on that item. So if you look at here, if I was doing this, these daggers drop right away. They have +9 melee damage and 2% critical strike. That's on all of them. And as I look down, it shows me all the ones that I want. So if I am good with that, then I can just kind of collect these. So early on, if you're starting at 0, obviously click them, even if you don't like that effect, but that's the only choice you got if you're going to play daggers. So you kind of go ahead and click at first. You almost just click all these. You're not going to see any of these endgame ones. That's fine. And then as you get more selective, you come in here and take them off. So let's say that you've gotten to level 12 or whatever area, start seeing sacrificial knife. It's not exactly connected to your level. You can start seeing in the gambler and in the store, it'll start selling those. As soon as you see the next level, then you can actually click this off if you don't want to see that anymore. So now it'll only show us this. And it won't show if you're at level like, you know, around this level, around 12, you're not going to necessarily see the bone dagger at the item level 25. So this is another way to do that, is you're only going to see the type as you go through. So the lower types are just not showing to you anymore. So it's not just any dagger. And then you can even get very selective. Like the build that I am doing right now, the main thing that it wants is going to be the critical strike multiplier. So it's actually important for me almost to turn all of these off and just go with this. Now, as I got into endgame, there was a couple more that I wanted to at least put up for possibility. Just because they would be cool. I don't mind the extra physical damage. I'm not really doing poison and hit. Maybe increased dodge rating. I'm not doing spells. So this is how you start to make those refined decisions. So now, even if I set this up from the beginning, after level 20 something, I would only see these. And that kind of takes care of that. So that, again, brings down the level of going, only showing me knives that I actually want to see, or daggers I want to see. So then I confirm and make that change, and then go ahead and update that. So again, we can go through and then we do this for each item. And that will be the first level where it'll kind of cut down. So I'm only seeing the types of those things that I want. I don't want to see armor. If I'm not running spells and I'm not a caster, I don't necessarily want to see spell or cast speed, and I don't necessarily want to see increased spell damage. You know, that doesn't help me. So that's how we then take the next level and we kind of sort these down. So one level beyond that, so let's say that's going really well, and then you start noticing it's not even just that. Now you're just getting too much of daggers that you basically don't want to equip, because you've got a good piece. It actually has a set of stats that you really want to see, and now everything that drops after that is simply a no, because you have like all the 4 affixes that are sitting underneath this are already great. So right here, this sword, I've got the melee physical damage, I got the 30% increased melee damage, I got 139% stun chance, and plus 222% chance to shred armor. This is awesome. Like, this is, I don't know if I would make a change other than seeing if I can get an extra thing to roll on it. So this is a pretty freaking awesome sword for me. So I do not need to see a lot of swords at this point. So once you get to this level and you start liking the items, and you're not going to be trading out for like a little bit better, you're not looking for a higher roll, say up at the top where the special things are. You see that plus 25 right in the name. It's like the base attack. The plus 25 melee damage. You see the 77% critical strike multiplier. Those are also in range. So as these drop of this type of dagger, I think the critical strike multiplier will actually go up to 80%. So if I am looking for that, I might keep this available just keep coming through so I can see that. But now I have all 4 skills that are really good. So what do we do about that? So the next thing I do is I come in here, and on all of these, this is the same for body armor, this is the same for anything where I start to feel like, man, I've got the affixes that I want. I now only want it to show me an item that's going to either compete or beat. You know, that's all I want to see. And you can see how this is starting to take where it makes it that Christmas feel that I was talking about at the beginning. So to do that, we come in here and we add conditions. So there's only a couple more things that I'm going to go through before we get into like crazy advanced. I'm just going to give you tips on how to keep modifying it, but let's keep going. So this one, now I can also set affixes that I want on this type. And where this becomes even more, so I can go through in the same thing, and I want to say, what do I want to see on this dagger? So do I want to see improved damage? Do I want to see penetration? Do I want to see lightning damage put on it? Do I want to see whatever I want to see? Then I can start going through and selecting those. So that is going to be the first level of that. So go through, let's just say I'm picking all. Block, health. I'm not going to go health on it. I want throwing. I want melee. There we go. Those are so good. Cooldown, maybe. No reflect, not worried about that. And everything rogue. Okay. Be more selective, obviously, but the more selective you are, the less things you see, so you can always control that back by making more selective. So I confirm that. So this stage, now if I went through and did it, even if I just did one at a time, like let's say you play for a little bit and you're like, hey, I'm tired of seeing so many boots. And then you did this for the boots and you went through and did the affixes. Once you've done it once, it really does save you so much time that it's totally worth it. And so now you guys are starting to see that this can get very selective, and I will show you at the end, I will show you the quick way to basically test if it isn't broken. Because the worst thing is like you put this up and then you stop seeing all these things and you're like, oh, what's going on? I'll show you a really quick way to test that, just to double check that when you make rule changes that you actually feel like you're getting the effect that you want and not missing out on things that you do want to see. So once I have that, the next level that I'm going to do is just right here on each of the items. I can now say, don't show me this item unless it has 2 of those. And once I have a consistent base where I have at least 2 of the skills I want to see in this, don't show me it unless I have 3. And you keep moving this and this gets it very selective, but then every piece that drops is an actual contender for the piece that you have equipped and has the right subtype and so on and so forth. So this is just a really awesome way to let the game kind of hunt that for you and say no a million times. And you just need to go, can I use that? That's freaking cool. I can't wait. Let's try it. Maybe I can craft it a little bit more powerful. And that's your decision rather than no, garbage, garbage, garbage. And so I just think that this is such an incredible feature. It makes the game feel just way more fun and way more exciting. So at this point, what you would have is, again, we'd have the blocking everything. Then we show the items that we're actually looking for. And now we can even refine exactly what we want to see on those items to make it really great, and affixes that we need for leveling up anything. So one of the things I would recommend, and you can do it either order, I did it this way because it was simpler. I just emphasized I put it in, basically forces the title in capital letters. So whatever the item title is, when it's in capital letters and I press update here, it's only going to show me. So it basically tells me that on the ground that's capital letters is because of a shard that I want, not because of an item that I might actually equip, because it's not one of these. So as soon as that goes bold, that's what's going on in that item. So outside of just changing the titles and making all caps, you actually have a choice to also recolor entirely. So that helps a lot. When a thing shows based on these filters of hide and show, you can also have it color. So if I go here, let's say I'm doing the bow, let's go ahead and just duplicate that. Duplicate the bow. So I'm gonna have a second one that has bow on it. Click here. Instead of show, I'm gonna say recolor. And so if I want it to be green, every time a bow drops, I want it to be this label. And so that's what will show up. I'll confirm, update. And so it'll say a recolor of bow. So if it sees a bow, and I'll probably put it above after it shows, then it'll also recolor green. So this is another way where you can start, maybe you want to put a color for the weapons, like put red for weapons, and you want body armors to be brown or whatever, and relics and be a certain color and so on and so forth. You can really decide that for yourself as you're going through, as you're like, maybe your build is really great, except for you need a good pair of boots or you need a good pair of gloves. So recolor is another way to kind of call it out, see it. So at this point, we are probably most of the way for what we need in early game. We can easily go to 30, 40 with this, especially if we're adding the affixes, and just have we're not dealing with tons and tons of items that we have to sort through constantly and pull off the ground. Now, what's going to start happening is about around 30 or so, you'll start seeing idols. So over here on my screen, if you see, there's the idols right here. And as you play through the game, you kind of open little like cubes that open. You can fit these in as you collect them. So what we're going to want to do is the exact same thing that we had done originally, is that we want to start with a rule at the very bottom, and we're going to go hide. And then we are going to go item type. And in this one, we are going to collect all idols. So all the idol types, no matter what it is, we're going to go ahead and say that we want to block those. And then I will drag this because, again, we want to be able to overwrite it. If it's at the top, it'll overwrite whatever is below it. So I want to put it down here with our normal, magic, and rare items. And instead of doing something where I just go in and pick the type of idols that I want, because different idols do have different effects, I'm just going to come back up to the top, and at the very top, I'm going to add a show, and I'm going to add a fix. So they don't really make this clear necessarily because they don't know. This is just all affixes. They don't make it clear to like what you're actually doing. But if you remember, down here at the bottom, what we see on our idols. Idols are specific to your class, so it does make sense to at least select it by this, and then you can even come in here and then get hyper selective and say I only want to see like these things. So let's say that you did that, or you pick whatever. Lead chance, increase critical strike. Sure, that sounds great. There's quite a bit here. Just pick the ones you'd really like to see in these spots, because they do come in different shapes and sizes. So pick a handful, so the certain ones only roll with certain types. But like this one has a chance to shred armor on melee hit. This one increases life. Increased life is generally a good idea. I do use this to round out some of my resistances. So if I'm weak in a spot, I will come back in here and I'll try to nudge these, maybe add health and then resistance. That'll help me finagle this through most of the end game until I'm like really end, and I know exactly where I'm getting my resistances, and I know what how much space I have to put these like all together. So you can kind of pick there and just go through all those things and pick what you'd like to see. Now so once that's done, the other thing is like if you pick these, like depending on how broad you select it, like if you're hyper selective and you're like, oh, it's these 5 things that I want, and that doesn't give a lot of option, you may just allow it to show you even if it has one of those on it. But if you've got like something closer to like 14 to 20 of things you wouldn't mind seeing on the idols, then you can go ahead and increase and say, hey, if I have 20, then I can only show me if I have 2. Now, this is all based on personal preference. I do recommend in early game, as usual, that's why I give you these options, is go for more fixes and build a stash, because that'll also come in play. Maybe you won't use it for this build, but it's not hard to keep stuff in the bag. The bags you have the infinite bag as long as you're willing to pay the gold. You can then keep just putting them away. So when you come through with another alt, that you can easily get to some of these general ones that you want. But that's how we do it. We'll do pretty much the same thing what we're doing here when we add Exalted. So Exalted are like rares, but one of the things that they roll, one of the fixes on it, like this one here, that dark purple at the bottom, that's one of the highest rolls you can do. So it's like it's a T6 or a T7. I think through regular crafting of a rare, you can only get to a tier 5 for that craft item. So this is what Exalteds are. At first, I just let all Exalteds come through because just in case I get some cool shards like that. When they roll at higher tiers, you also get more shards when you break them down. Also, they also might be useful for other builds that I have coming up. So it's not bad to collect purples early. End game, you'll start seeing that you get so many, it's as annoying as just having tons of rares you never want to see and you know you don't care about. And you can then add Exalted to this list and do a very similar thing that we've already done. Okay, so I did tell you guys that I was going to show you some way to test your filter to make sure it's working. So generally after I kill like a boss or something, like that's usually when you have the highest amount of gear just on the ground. And as you can see, they show like these little color markers that they're little like round things, and then they have a line that comes up, and they're the color of the item type. So if you see a purple, you're seeing Exalted. If you see yellow, you see rare, so on. And so you can see, kind of get a feel for how much stuff is being hidden at all times throughout the game. But when I'm testing out a filter, if I see a big pocket of these, especially when I've just taken down a big boss, I can just hit a key. So in my case, it's X. I don't know if that's just the universal, but it is in one of the keys. You can set it for yourself. When I hold X right there, now it shows me those. So all those things on the ground are now things that I can actually see, and I can kind of float over and say, hey, did the filter do what I wanted? I made this change. Oh, wait, I want to see that. Why am I not seeing that? Okay, maybe I didn't include this affix, or I didn't include that dagger type. You can start to kind of test and debug what's working and not working. I do this a little bit because I want a sense of certainty. I don't want to feel like something really great just didn't get shown because I was too stringent on my selections and my fixes. But if I do that, then I see that and play, oh yeah, this is garbage, garbage, garbage. I was just throwing all that away. Then I know that it's working. And so that's how I get certainty around that. And then it makes me feel a lot more freer just to like keep playing and not worry about what doesn't get shown. If you guys are doing that, you'd also probably want to see some of the really cool features in Last Epoch across the board. And I created this video where I go for why Diablo 4 players are going to love Last Epoch. And I talk about all the great things that are coming to you soon and why they're so awesome. So hopefully you enjoy that video too.